Hello, and welcome to Wonderstruck. I am your host, Elizabeth Rovier. I'm a clinical psychologist, a yoga teacher, and a graduate of Harvard Divinity School. I'm really curious about our experiences of wonder and awe and how they transform us. My guest this time is Reilly Nichols. Mary has been teaching yoga for more than 40 years, and she's the director of the Yoga Studies program at Nalanda Institute for Contemplative Science in New York City. After earning a degree in anthropology at Harvard, Mary completed 5 years of study in meditation ashrams in both India and the United States under the mentorship of Swami Muktananda. Today, Mary teaches individual and group yoga, advises organizations on mindfulness and embodiment practices, and also teaches stress management in psychiatric settings at Bronxville Psychiatric Wellness Group in Westchester County. Mary's journey into a life of wonder begins with an ecstatic experience that she was hardly prepared for, and one she was at first hesitant to embrace until it happened again and again. What would you do if a white light suddenly told you that you would one day meet a great master? That's what Mary had to confront. Mary's story brings up fascinating questions like, how do we recognize a moment of awakening? Where can we find the courage to accept it? And what can we do with that awakening that will elevate consciousness and change lives? Stay tuned as Mary answers these questions as only she can. So with that, I would like to start talking with you, Mary, and ask you what happened to you your freshman year at Harvard?
Hi, Elizabeth. Well, I'll launch right in then. The first thing that happened was I got there. It was freshman year. It's kind of a stressful thing, to adjust and everything. But I had a friend from New York City who I knew in high school, and he came over and he meditated. So he told me how great it is to meditate, and I thought it was really pretty stupid. And I smoked constantly, and I was like, this is pretty dumb. But anyway, he left. But just before he left, he placed his thumb on my third eye, on the space between the eyebrows. And I said, oh, well, whatever. And I was doing laundry, but I was waiting for my laundry to dry, so I decided I'd sit down and try meditating, And I sat in a lotus posture. And, about 3 minutes in, I thought, this is the most boring. I'm never going to do this. Is stupid. So I lay down on my bed at that time, and I found myself dozing. And then my body became incredibly stiff and rigid. And I started to fight against it to try to control the body, And then it started to spasm or seize. And I could hear the gasping for breath, And then I went through a tunnel.
Oh, wow.
I know. So I went through the tunnel, and I heard these beautiful wind chimes, and I found myself seated in a perfect lotus posture with a loincloth in a man's body, right, in a grass hut. And I remember feeling, just for a moment, I felt like I was God. That was the thought, right? So into the hut, there was a big storm going on outside, and into the hut came a young woman, and she was crying about the suffering of the world, really sobbing about it. It was almost like I was almost annoyed, but I wanted to help her out. So I glanced at her, and out of the corner of my eye came a stream of music. And it was choral music, and in the song was the whole creation. And I saw all the humanity striving and longing and trying and suffering and hoping and doing things in this music. And it was so beautiful, right? I often would, to describe it, say if the Ode to Joy is 1 degree, this is 365 degrees. It was just overwhelming, And so I'm glancing the creation out of my eye, and I started to weep tears from how beautiful it was, and the tears hit the ground explosively, and then I found myself on my bed again.
Wow.
I know. And I kind of, did this thing, which anytime I would have any kind of traumatic experiences, be like, that didn't happen, and walk around, pretend that didn't happen, know?
Yeah.
But anyway, I was there to study ecstatic religion, non-ordinary experience, shamanism. I was just passionate about this.
So you were interested in that before this actually happened to
Yes.
you, but you still thought meditation was boring.
I did. Well, I didn't think that was how you got it. I'd read the Carlos Castaneda books religiously. When I was 16, they really turned me on, and I thought, well, you get it with drugs or shamanism, or you got to meet some sort of a teacher, but. Meanwhile, it was a really fascinating study, and the department was fantastic.
But you got to slow down for a
Okay.
second. So this happens to you just with some kind of a friend or person you meet in the laundry room that's talking about meditation.
Yeah.
And then you have this very powerful, pretty overwhelming experience. I mean, that would have to be sort of scary.
Yeah.
What did you do?
I basically, I sort of tried to deny it and, carry on with my day, that kind of thing. And then, excuse me, but more things started to happen then. And by the time junior year came along, it was other stuff like that was happening. So I did think that I might have epilepsy. And so I did go to the health services 3 times, and the last time they said they got me an EEG, and what you do in those days, this is back in the 70s, you had to lie down and try to go to sleep, because sometimes these things happen in the period between sleeping and waking. There's sleep paralysis. And then they would flash lights to see if they could stimulate a seizure. And they also had static. And 1 or 2 times that I would have these things, there'd be static on the radio and it would set it off. So these kinds of things. So, but then there was no definitive answer about whether I might have temporal lobe epilepsy. I just went on with my life. But I was trying to tamp it down. But I was having many spiritual experiences.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's really fascinating because it's almost like, you were interested in this before and then someone sort of pushes open the door a little bit and it starts happening.
Yeah.
It's like you're being called to do this kind of work or to study these kinds of things.
Yeah. Although I did think that maybe I had psychosis going on.
Yeah, I can understand that.
I had a wonderful, smart roommate, and she was the smartest girl in math in the department. She's beautiful, too. But she had a psychotic break, and her psychosis was math involved. I came home to see that she'd written math equations on the wall with lipstick,
Oh, no way.
So I thought, I'm going off the rails, according to my study. But luckily, I've been striving to appear normal ever since, and I'm trying very hard, and I think it's working.
Well, I think one of the things that's interesting to me, as well as I think a lot of people, is that, this is a kind of phenomenon that human beings are capable of having. And, it is extraordinary, and yet it is in the range of human experience. And I mean, as a psychologist, right, I'm a big fan of William James, and he studied these things, the varieties of religious experience back in 1903, 1900, and said, why don't we study this? This kind of thing happens to people, and it's the cause of great transformation, and we do ourselves a disservice by not looking at it. And so, once you realized you weren't having a psychotic break or temporal lobe epilepsy, but yet it was part of your studies, I mean, I imagine that it was transformative and life-changing for you.
Yes, and so all these sort of incidents happened, and then another major one happened when I decided to, in junior year we write a thesis. It's our junior thesis, and that's where I decided I would do it on ecstatic religious cults. And what I was seeing was that that cult activity, and when I say cult, I kind of think everything's a cult. This is all, we're all in cults. But some of them are very adaptive and useful, and a lot of people can thrive through these belief systems. And some of them are, not that adaptive in a way. So when cultures are breaking down, when the basic institutions of a culture start to break down, you see a lot of this activity. And what I was doing in this, and I'm writing my paper, and it was so exciting. I mean, I couldn't even wait to get to the desk to start writing, And I saw that social breakdown promotes it's sort of the fertile ground of new cult behavior. Now, why? Well, it's because the old institutions, the old paradigms are not functioning in the new reality. What is the new reality? Well, there could be environmental change. Okay, but often what you can study in anthropology is the culture contact between the Pacific Islanders and the Japanese Navy, right? So this contact completely blew apart the culture of the Pacific Islanders. I mean, in their world, the hierarchy was who has the most pigs, and what other sort of attributes of prestige, they would go away. It would now be the young boy or girl who can communicate with these people, right? And that would become the new attribute of power. So the attributes of power change when the environment changes, and now you need new adaptive skills to be to thrive in the environment, right? So I'm saying, wow, man, this is so cool. I love it so much, right? And so I'm writing about it, and then I say, it's one of these Gramps with the light bulb above his head and Betty Boop. So I had the light bulb. It went, my goodness, it's a very simple thought, but modern Western civilization is now breaking down. We must be due for a spiritual transformation. Wow. And the moment I had that thought, there was an explosion at the base of the spine, and this ridiculously strong energy wiggled up my spine.
Wow.
And I thought I always say like a fire hose, although I've never felt a fire hose, but it's this power, and it went into the crown of my head, and then the whole world became white light, including myself. Yeah. Incredible. And the white light spoke to me and said I was going to meet a great master and I would recognize him. And that's what happened. And I came out of that, right? I remember jumping up and staring at my chair with accusation, what did you do to me? And I, as if the chair had started this thing. And then I told my roommate,
The mathematician?
Yeah, no, this is a different one. And she... just thought I was smoking too much pot or something. I don't know. But so nobody understood. It was the beginning of seeing that you're not going to be able to communicate this without people thinking you're crazy.
Exactly.
Or lying, which one do you prefer? I don't think I like either of those. So, so soon that was in the spring of junior year, and in the summer of junior year, I ended up meeting Muktananda. And he was a Shaktipat guru who awakened Kundalini, and it just went wild.
When you met him?
Yeah.
Literally right when you met him?
Well, I'll tell you that story. Do you want to hear it?
How can we not? How can we not?
So I had a very mystical uncle, and we're all...
Wait, you had a mystical uncle?
I did.
What does that mean?
Well, he was an actor, and he was... wild and crazy. The whole family, the entire lineage, both sides, very wild, very crazy, very unconventional. A lot of actors, tremendous amount of alcoholics too, and so he was highly mystical. But he wouldn't, he didn't. He wasn't holy seeming. None of us is holy seeming, but he really was. Anyway, he. Had his own interaction with Muktananda, but he hadn't told me about it. But he said we were going to go upstate. It was summer of 1976. We're going to go upstate and meet. He called it a saint. He called Baba a saint. So I kind of immediately was skeptical because I didn't believe that. I thought you had to suffer a lot and be a martyr. I didn't know what that was really. And but we did go. I'm glad they didn't say guru, because in those days guru was associated to me with fake, you're going to sell me something. I don't know. Anyway, I get there, and just prior, a week or so before I met Muktananda, we went upstate, I had this experience. And what it was I was working in the dorms, the Harvard dorms, to clean them, which I used to do at the end of the year to minimum wage to get some money, before I went home. We'd have a couple of weeks of cleaning them, like with toothbrushes against the drains and everything, just really clean. And so I was doing that. And then one morning, I woke up to a sound, and the sound was so loud. And I could say that it was like a trumpet, but it was the loudest sound you've ever heard, and yet it didn't hurt my ears. But as I looked out the window, I heard this sound, and I knew that the whole world was hearing, and I decided it must be the end of the world. What's happening, right? And out of the sky came this swirling, what I thought was a flying saucer, something, and it came zooming at me, and it went into my third eye, then I woke up. So this was this thing. And after that, I couldn't get the sound out of my head, because when I had heard it, this is the weirdest thing, but it didn't have a beginning or an end like most sounds, all right? Later on, I would learn that Om is called the unstruck sound. And this is what I heard, but I didn't know that at all. So anyway, I couldn't get it out of my head. I just couldn't get it out of my head. And so when we went up and met Muktananda, we pranammed, because that's what people were doing. They were bowing. He hit me with the peacock feathers. I went and sat down. He was very weird to me. I thought he was totally strange. And then he started talking about meditating on Om. And then he pointed to me in the midst of, several hundred people. And he said, "That's what you're doing now."
Wow.
I know. And I pretended I had no idea what he was talking about. So that was the moment. So then
So he could see that was happening.
Oh,
to you.
yeah. It's almost hard to describe the proof of omniscience that you got when you were living near him. It was truly, I always say it was scary. I mean, people say, "No, you meant you were in awe. You're wonderstruck." Yeah, I was terrified.
Well, I mean, it's interesting because we have thought of the name also awestruck, because awe is like it's awful or it's scary.
Yes.
Because it is scary.
Yeah.
It absolutely is. There's no doubt to me.
Your hair stands on end.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's the kind of thing you had a lot around. And what basically being in the environment, you began to naturally sort of monitor your thoughts.
Yeah.
Because they'd manifest so potently and obviously, So it was, the Shakti, the awakened Shakti.
Can you just, I feel like people might not know what Shakti or Shaktipat means, what that is. And Muktananda was from he from the Shaivite tradition or Hindu?
Yes, he was. Although he knew all of the traditions of all the Indic yogic traditions, and mastered them all. But the creme de la creme of those philosophies is Shaivism or Kashmir Shaivism, which is tantric.
So it's a Hindu tantra?
Yes. Mm-hmm. And so Shakti, one way we might think of it is, all Hatha yoga, I'm going to say something that might surprise or make people mad, is Kundalini yoga. All of it is. All of these things people are doing with their body, the equilibration of right and left, forward and back, is to promote the awakening of what we call, in that tradition, Kundalini Shakti. Mm-hmm. But it is the Holy Spirit. It's energetic. It gives you a carrot and a stick. Okay? The carrot being, people wonder, how can I get my Shakti to awaken? Shall I do this, do that, do this? No. Love people. It loves love. I can't tell you why, but anything you do that has love in it is the thing that feeds the Shakti. Mm-hmm. So you don't have to be like this incredibly serious yoga person. When you bought your your coffee at Starbucks, if you sent love to the people around you, even the ones that you might normally not love, then the Shakti likes it and it leaps.
Yeah.
And you can feel it,
Is there anything that in more of a Western framework that we could use to describe what that phenomenon is? I mean, I know you said the Holy Spirit, but even from our scientific Western paradigm, is there...
Well, I could say that we don't really understand the human nervous system that well, but it's definitely a nervous system experience, which I guess all experiences are, but it is promoted by a certain kind of healthy flow of energy in the nervous system. And it's like, I would describe it as you plug something into the wall, there's two prongs, okay? And you get a third thing, which is this energy, right? And so those two prongs in the yogic system are considered the Ida and the Pingala, which are the sun, moon, currents in the subtle body. We call them nadis. There's 72,000 nadis, supposedly, but there's these three important ones. And when the Ida and the Pingala are equilibrated, the central channel awakens. And I promote the idea of using your Hatha yoga practices or whatever you do for this equilibration, but you can't forget the love, because people try, they say, I'll move my Shakti to this chakra. You're not going to tell the Shakti what to do, okay? It is pure intelligence, and it is awakened through love, just like the Sleeping Beauty. The Sleeping Beauty is like a paradigm. She's awakened by the kiss of love.
Fascinating.
Right?
Yeah.
And so it's not going to work if you try to, it makes me laugh when people, they're going to do this thing, It's not going to work because the Shakti thinks that's funny, I think. But, you have to make love with it, really. And how do you do that? Well, I chant, I use my posture. Why? So if I extend the crown of my head and up and the tailbone down, because there's a dynamic of the two polarities, I'm promoting the nice environment for the movement of Shakti. But we might just think that it's nervous system energy, right? Well, what is the nervous system? Human nervous system is capable of the experience of God realization or samadhi, unitive experience, which everybody's going to tell you that's the shizzle, right? And so we are capable of it, and we have ways to enter it. And as I said, just don't forget the love part.
Well, I think of it as if that feeling of something greater, and even being really simplistic, but studies on altruism where people actually feel good when they're doing something for someone else, that kind of thing. You actually feel a sense of inspiration.
Yes.
And so it's the same kind of idea, right? And that those kinds of positive feelings will affect your nervous system in wonderful ways.
Exactly.
Some of the things that, we're talking about that sound kind of out there or very, esoteric are more and more kind of hey, this is going on. This is part of our human life. And they're doing studies on ecstatic states and looking at how science is doing it. So how does it affect the body and the nervous system for well-being studies?
Yes.
And how helpful it is.
Yeah. That's really true. And ecstasy is, something that what it means. Ecstasy means out of oneself. So you're out of your ego.
Exactly.
And we sometimes will use substances like alcohol or whatever, but it doesn't work after a while, but we all need to get out of the egoic trap, because it's terribly scary to be identified only with this body and this story, obviously, because it's not eternal.
Right.
And that when you have ecstasy, you identify with the eternal. And your whole nervous system just gets completely bathed in that, the total cessation of stress and tension, which the awareness of your eternality brings. Yeah.
Absolutely.
It's so good. And we have ways to get ecstasy. I mean, there's the dancing, chanting, singing, but, having a dinner party is a beautiful way to to honor and bring about ecstasy in a way, I think, because you're communing. I have this idea that, the Last Supper, where Jesus says, do this in remembrance of me. And everybody thinks you're supposed to go with your head hung low to get a wafer. And I think he's saying, have a dinner party, love each other, and enjoy one another, have, wine and bread. And that's how I want to be worshipped.
That's beautiful. I love that.
I do too.
I mean, that's fantastic. Yes. And it makes sense because that's that's one of the things that's interesting to me too about yoga and tantra, like going back to these, they talk about the proto-religions and these mystery schools and practices that, they were kind of dancing around, having bread and wine, and maybe they were perhaps doing the yoga postures. I mean, was that part of it, do you think?
Well, I think moving the body is part of it. And, if you see shamanic practices, a lot of times they'll dance for 3 days, okay? Wow. Like the Kung Bushmen, and they talk directly about the energy moving up the spine. They call it num, but they do it with a click, the click sound, num or whatever. And they dance for a long time, and then they awaken that. So definitely, I think that I think that yoga practices are shamanic, and shamanism being a universal thing from all our root culture, so a human thing that we are all related to, where our early ancestors, for one thing, they got a lot of energy and wisdom from animals. So the animal spirits is something that people, obviously the bear clan, that's probably a real thing. You're watching bears and you identify that and you want the strength and the capability of a bear,
Right.
So I think that when you do yoga postures, you're going to animal shapes and you're remembering your own evolution.
Oh, that's fascinating. Yeah, that's interesting.
I think so.
On your website, and just having known you and heard you speak a couple of times, there's ways that you do all kinds of these beautiful parallels with images or symbols in Christianity, or even the writings in Christianity with Hinduism, or I guess the Vedanta or Shaivism.
Right.
And, for example, one is that you've got the Gospel of Thomas quote with when the two become one, then, you enter the kingdom. Yeah. And then I guess, and then there you go with the Hindu Shaivism and the Spanda and the heart, which it's like, would you be willing to talk about how those guys are connected and what that actually means? Because something about that aspect also of the heart and that sense of love, I find it very fascinating. I think people would find it really interesting.
Yeah. With that beautiful piece from the Gospel of Thomas, and that has a lot of really interesting things in it, the Gospel of Thomas, and they seem tantric. And even what I mentioned about the dinner party idea, that's very tantra. So tantra says, see the wonder and the amazement in, having dinner with your friend, it's you're not sort of waiting for, in a way, it's the constant practice of taking delight, Abhinavagupta says. Okay, it's a practice.
What a great idea.
Isn't that a good idea?
Yeah, taking delight. Delight's such a great word.
Yes, and make sure you practice it. So if I get up and, you can be dull and go get your coffee, same old, or you can be appreciative, and it's not that hard. I know you do it. I can see it in your face, that what kind of person you are. I read faces a lot. But so the heart is a very important concept, I suppose, in Shaivism, but also obviously Jesus, and the Sacred Heart and all that. So in Shaivism, the heart has all these layers of meaning, and I would say that it is meaning itself. Okay, so you could say if your life doesn't have a heart, heart in it, and as that was one of the Carlos Castaneda quotes, for me there is only the path that has heart, any path that has heart, and there is where I travel breathlessly. So you
Beautiful.
remember that one? It's from Don Juan, the teachings of Don Juan. And so if you don't have that, you see that your life has no meaning. Okay, so meaning is a sort of a mystery in a way.
Yes.
And so the heart is the meaning of things. So you could say love is the meaning. But in Kashmir Shaivism, we have in the subtle body, you have the heart chakra, which is called the Anahata chakra, and that means the unstruck. So in the heart chakra is this constant vibration, okay, and you can tune yourself to listen to it. It's a constant ah.
Oh.
Yeah, and it's the beginning of Om, but it's just this ah, right? Huh. And it has no in breath or out breath, so it's a continuous thing.
Can you hear it? Do you hear it?
Yeah, you can tune to it anytime you want. It's there. All these things are there, like your perfection, your purity is there. Okay, you're not gonna strive to be realized. You are realized. It's all about calming the hell down, you know, and then just touching it, and then use the guidebook that says, "Hey, Elizabeth, that experience you're having, that's the absolute." And they go, "Oh, now I appreciate it." Look, I tell you, I saw the Caravaggio and I didn't think much of it.
Yeah.
Then I read about it. I'm like, oh my God, I got to go reach that. That's incredible, So it's the appreciation of what is, right? Mm-hmm. And that is what the end of the day. It's kind of like Dorothy. She was already home.
Yes.
And she had to go through this whole harrowing thing to believe it.
But she had to find it for herself.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Right.
That's such a great, scripture is The Wizard of Oz.
Yeah.
I think.
Yes. That you're already home. Mm-hmm. You just don't quite know it.
Yes. And what's cool is she had the Cowardly Lion, the Scarecrow, and the Tin Man, and that is, the yoga of action, the yoga of love, and the yoga of knowledge. Ah. They need each other. You can't be without any of them, really. Mm-hmm. And I loved it too because the Wicked Witch of the West is like Kali, the scary time, because she's got that. She turns over the hourglass, and you're terrified, right? Yeah. And that's the scariest thing you ever saw is that hourglass, Yeah. And that's our condition.
Yes. Right. Like when is
Yeah.
our time up and what does that actually mean?
Exactly. Flying monkeys.
Exactly. How have these kinds of awakening experiences affected how you see yourself, your life, and, like what this all means, like this reality, so to speak?
Well, I think I see, for one thing, that here's the thing. So, I do and have had like a lot of this non-ordinary stuff, and I'm like, why me?
Mm-hmm.
I can't tell why. I don't understand this. It's kind of crazy. But when you confer with the angelic beings, they're going, oh my God, you walked on the earth and you swam in the ocean and you fell in love. What was that like? This is we've been in our disembodied state forever, and this is the exciting moment here. Mm-hmm. And so know that this is the experience. You've been in the heavenly realms many, many times where you can do all kinds of stuff and hear Om. This is the thing that's amazing right here, to assume the limitations of this human life and to get on the battlefield and be, like if you were an athlete, you're in the game, man. And that's where all the angels are looking at you and sort of envying that you get to have this experience. It's kind of scary. Of course, when it's over, it's like Dorothy, you wake up, oh my God, that was all a dream. But for me, so I think I had to have these experiences so that I can teach effectively. And because it's, there's a mission going on, I think, for this planet to step in at times of crisis and urge on the evolutionary leap beyond the dualism that we're in, And so I feel like that's my job is to be able to, help push along that process of evolution of consciousness, and to the extent that I can. And, and it's funny because you can be all those spiritual things, but your life is still going to have suffering and difficulty and, all kinds of conditions.
Right.
In America, we think if we suffer that we're failing. It's not true.
Yes, yeah, right. But that's what I think, too, is very interesting, like having an extraordinary experience or spiritual experience. Practicing yoga isn't going to stop the world from having, you're not going to not have conflict or difficulties at times here and there. It's not like it's not an escape.
Nope.
It's part of human experience.
Yes.
And it's a certain type of awareness, which I think that you're saying it helps you appreciate all of these kinds of phenomena as part of your own unique adventure.
Yes.
And you were saying earlier, too, like having had like that kind of sense of something greater than ourselves, or we're a part of that thing that is greater than ourselves, I guess takes some of the fear or terror out of me and my body of however many years I have, right?
Yes. It is. It's abhaya, which means the fearless. And so what you do in meditation, and that's another thing that I think I'm supposed to do. First of all, if I feel like, like it's the Irish in me. It's like, oh my God, I teach people to breathe and I get paid for it. It's incredible. It's like, what a scam, But at the end, you can reach the source of all at the end of your breath, at the end of your exhalation, at the end of your inhalation. And you can leap into the arms of the absolute every time you do breathe, if you want to. And then you start to get it's like you're touching base. You know how a baby needs, some babies, my older son didn't. He would just keep running. But some of them, they want to touch base. Mom's still there. Okay, now I can explore. So I do that with my breath-centered meditation. I help people be able to access those experiences so they can touch the absolute, the eternal, and then explore.
Yeah, it's interesting. I know you've also said before, too, that the breath, you've talked about breath as like spirit or inspiration, right? Respiration. It's got spirit in it etymologically, and like breathing in spirit, breathing out and connecting. And then, of course, when a person passes, it's like that kind of that person's last breath. And, I think of it that way. It's not that I still find myself kind of, admittedly nervous about it. But when I think about it from a greater perspective in that way, I feel a little bit less afraid. Of it, of dying.
I have this knowledge that we've all died many, many, many times. It's the body has died many, many times, so you don't have to be that scared. But you do want to you could also think like having a figurehead of God that you cozy up to, which I do, and it's like, hey, buddy, you and me, right? That's what I do, because that also reduces fear, and that I feel that's another thing to since my fear is reduced, I can help other people. Fear is not it has a lot of negative outcome if you do fear-based behavior. And you can see that it's not we have to overcome it.
Yeah. Like look for what it, like when it we have to overcome it if it's certainly acting in a way that's overtaking us.
Yes.
Absolutely. Yeah. There's like this, going back, like connecting that to the breath. Mary Oliver, the poet, has some kind of a phrase where it's like, she says it much more eloquently and poetic than I'm gonna say, but it's something like, that little breath, like that little breath you're taking and you're calling it a life, like, come on, deep breathe, get out there, live your life.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's actually a very good line.
I like that. I'm going to use that, Elizabeth. I've got to teach a breath-centered thing next Monday, and I'm going to look for that.
Yes.
I love to bring poetry in.
Oh, well, yeah, it was Niels Bohr said something like, the more we go further with what we're doing with physics, we're not going to be able to use regular language. We're going to have to talk about it in poetry because there's no other way to explain this.
Oh, yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
So I am curious. So it's wonderful to talk to you because it's like you're so much at ease with talking about these kinds of things, and obviously because it's been going on your whole life. I mean, it still happens.
Yeah.
And there's situations where people will have these kinds of experiences and still feel like I have to pretend that I didn't, or it's not going to fit in my world because I am a medical doctor or I'm a biologist or I'm a school teacher. I can't talk about this. And have you had interactions, or like, you're married, you have kids. What do they think about all of this?
It's really funny because I never talked to my husband about this at all. I hope he doesn't listen. He might, but I don't think he'll pay much attention. So he has. It's funny too, Elizabeth. Not just that he isn't interested. It's like he doesn't really like. I mean, it's not his favorite thing. So some people don't like mysticism. That's okay because it certainly, if help to reduce taking pride, because there are a lot of people that just don't find this, they don't dig it, and
right.
So that's okay because they don't need to, and I don't talk about it. And the only thing is that if I have friendships where I don't talk about this stuff, it feels that I'm harboring an awful lot of myself that they don't know about. But because there's not all that much that is interesting about me. I have to tell you the truth. I'm not very skilled at anything, really. It's true. I tell you the truth. So in a way, you just find eventually, you figure out who you can talk to or want to talk about it, which is why I'm so happy to be here, because you want to talk about it. And, generally I won't talk about it when people aren't interested at all.
Yeah, you don't want to force it on somebody that's like, what? Did you hear what she said?
No.
Yeah, I can understand that. I mean, it's really interesting. It's I meditate, and I do actually. One of my favorite types of meditation is transcendental meditation, and there was a period of time where just doing my regular meditation, and then I saw this I had this vision of something, and the same kind of experience. I was scared. Well, not exactly. I didn't have the universe coming out of my eye, but I saw this kind of mythical creature rising out of an ocean, and it's like, wow. Oh my God! And I was like, am I okay? Yeah. Am I okay? Yeah. And I went to, at that time, talk to my therapist, who was also a meditation person. And he was like, yeah, that's okay. It sounds like that was a naga or something that you saw coming out of the ocean.
Oh, cool.
And I was like, oh. I was like, and so that's cool? That's okay? And he's like, yeah. People have stuff like that when they meditate. Not a big deal. I'm not going to go send you to the ER.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, okay.
That's the Nagas. They're snake deities, and you're wearing a snake.
Yeah, I am.
What is that snake that you're wearing?
Well, it's kind of my good luck charm. It says, you're gonna laugh. It says fear eats the soul. So it's because I was nervous about it today. I was like, okay, I don't want to be afraid. And then I have my.
Okay, so you've got a snake ring. So I'm going to say that you have a spiritual heritage in that tradition, which is a very, very powerful Shakti tradition in India.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
Cool.
Past lives is a thing that I experienced. That's why I'm so relaxed about dying, because I saw so many of them, and I see them in other people. So Naga,
God, you don't see mine, do you?
Well, the Naga thing.
No, the past lives are good, not my future.
God forbid. Could we stop now? I'm done over here. Yeah. Oh God! But that thing about the universe coming out of my eye. So years later, 20 years later, I learned that in Shaivism, the glance of Shiva creates the universe through his glance, and he weeps because it's so beautiful, and those tears are called the tears of Rudra, the Rudraksha, you know? So, I mean, I had this classic thing, but that Naga thing, I swear to God, Elizabeth, that's...
Yeah, it was cool. It was like this kind of like snake-like thing with wings just like rising up out of the ocean.
Oh, my God. So that's the, Quetzalcoatl is the winged serpent. And if you look at the caduceus, it's the two snakes and there's wings on top. So that winged serpent is you're going to see it all throughout the world as a symbol of the awakened Kundalini. I love what you said because you connected this, the Naga awakening. I want you to start looking into the Naga tradition. It's very interesting.
Curious. I will.
Yeah. They're real beings, and they're serpent beings.
There was like one thing that I have to just say this because I thought it was so cool that you had said this. Can I repeat something that you said? Which I just think is awesome. It's about yoga, and given that you've spent 40 years doing yoga, we were talking about this with yoga and yoga as like grounding the spirit in the body, awakening the spirit in the body, or awakening like neurophysiologically. And you said that yoga prepares the body for a deep somatic cognition of our infinitude. I mean, that's a great thing to say. I mean, that is amazing. So, I don't know, maybe if you have like 2 words on that, and then I can wrap this up.
Well, and so not to make it seem like a faraway thing, but anyone who's done shavasana at the end of the end of a class, you're what I think you're doing when you do the yoga class, you're taking the dog out for a walk. Otherwise, it's going to be like wanting to bring in the leash over. So you took the dog for a walk. Now it's ready to settle down, you know? And so in the deep relaxation, you can perceive the subtle vibration. And back to the idea of spanda, which is in Kashmir Shaivism, there's an understanding that the substrate of reality is vibratory, and the string theory thing also says that too. And so what you're doing, so you've now made your body a tuning fork, and you now can start resonating with the infinite, and you let it just sort of bathe you, and you experience it. It's there's a lot of and the infinite is experienced in the heart. It's as if the heart is the sensory organ for the infinite.